Should the Republicans take the House back, what is your plan to spend down the national debt and kind of get things back in line as far as the deficit spending?
Well, I think almost every department in the federal government, the last budget cycle, and then going into this cycle, the majority party, the Democrats, have given them substantial raises, and this is in addition to the monies that were provided to the agencies in the first COVID relief package. So I think from the Republican standpoint, just to hold spending at status quo. So not an increase, not a decrease, just to hold spending at status quo. And then look at the regulatory framework and how that hampers both our small and large businesses. There have been several provisions that the Biden administration departments have passed, which really hurt small businesses. We just saw last week the independent contractors, the apprenticeships. Those things, affect our ability for our companies and manufacturing companies and small businesses to grow and to be successful. And so, looking at those regulatory policies and how they affect the economy, if our economy grows, our revenues increase, that's increased revenue to the federal government. So, growing that pie and increasing the amount of revenue coming into the federal government. And then, getting a handle on inflation. Extraordinarily important that we get a handle on inflation. As we know, not only do we as individuals suffer from high prices, we know that it's the most regressive tax that there is, which is mostly borne by seniors on a fixed income, low income, people of color, and, working families. But the other part of the inflation story is that the response to high inflation is the Federal Reserve raising interest rates, and we're paying a higher interest rate on servicing our debt. So it's really important that we get our budget in control, that we hold spending at status quo, not increasing, and then be able to increase our economic output, which increases revenues, so that we can pay down that debt. And hopefully, with the stronger economy, we'll be able to reduce inflation as well too.
See, as a small business owner myself, I got to tell you that federal income taxes are very difficult to come up with every quarter. So when I hear you say you don't want to decrease spending, that makes me a little nervous. So, is there anywhere we could maybe look at lowering some spending? Like, we're sending all this money to Ukraine and other parts of the world. So where can we start making some decreases?
Well, I certainly think that you can make decreases, but we need to do that in a pragmatic and reasonable fashion. So as we look at spending in the federal government, and you hear it frequently, waste, fraud, and abuse. So one of the things I'm doing on the healthcare side of it is looking at how we use artificial intelligence in Medicare and Medicaid to detect fraud or overpayments. And that's a way that saves the government money. So I think we need to continue to look at all aspects of our budget and, where do they exceed their constitutional mandate? Are there individuals that are close to retirement, and do they need to be replaced? So certainly I think of that, but there's been a big ramp up in the federal government and the federal government agencies, and so I think we have to do that in a thoughtful manner so that we don't penalize American citizens who are relying upon certain services from certain agencies.
And certain agencies, legislation just passed to increase the number of IRS agents. Have you been able to look into that more? I mean, where are those folks? I know they're going to replace the people that are retiring and so forth, but what are all those extra ones going to do?
Well, the majority of the $80 billion, which doubles the size of the IRS, the majority of that, over $46 billion, goes into enforcement. Only 3.6 or 3.7 billion goes into taxpayer assistance. We're still helping people to get tax refunds from 2020. And people frequently tell us that no one in the IRS answers their phone. So we know that federal agencies are still working from home under the COVID-19 pandemic. We need these agencies working at full speed. We need them more efficient. And when you look at doubling the IRS's budget and the number of agents that they're hiring, most of that goes into enforcement. And this isn't to tackle, the 600 billionaires there are in the United States. This is to go after average, ordinary working people so that they don't take their legal deductions. They're not cheating. They're complying with their taxes, but as you said, the tax code is extremely complicated. It is very complex. It is hard to figure out, and people are trying to take their legal deductions. And the average person doesn't have a cadre of attorneys or accountants that can go and go over their tax returns. Even the Washington Post said that over 50% of these audits and enforcement would go to people making under $75,000 a year, over 90% to people making under $200,000 a year. So I think if the Republicans get the majority, that probably one of the first things we will do is to stop that increased funding to the IRS, have funding that goes to the taxpayer assistance side and for the information technology, so they stop doing paper and can do things electronically. That's where we would put money, but we would get rid of 87,000 new IRS agents.
And there's from the cheap seats, which unfortunately still am part of the cheap seats. It looks like Congress is very divided, and Nancy Pelosi is pretty much the only voice coming out of Congress. What's the Republican strategy if you win? I mean, are you guys going to try to keep that division, say, no, we're Republicans, we have the majority, we're going to run these things our way like the Democrats have? Or will you guys be more open to sharing? Or what do you think is the better strategy for America?
Well, certainly what I found in my 20 months in Congress is that Nancy Pelosi controls everything. So even the Democrat chairs of committees may not know what's in a bill that they're going to mark up. So this all comes from the Speaker's office. One of the things that we heard when we went into D.C. is that the Democrats weren't supposed to help or sign on to Republican bills. Nonetheless, in 20 months, I passed over 13 bills, 5 appearances to the White House. 4 of the bills I passed unanimously. So there was broad bipartisan support. The Republicans, certainly, we've been penalized by how the rules were set up, and they took away the minority rights. But we feel that we need to get back to a regular order, a regular process, and that we would restore some of those minority rights to the minority party. But we also want to be able to legislate and get things done. We have a commitment to America, the 4 pillars of which are an economy that is strong, a nation that is safe, a future built on freedom, and a government that's accountable. So we wanted to be able to not only have oversight and investigations, restore the processes that are organized and efficient within Congress, but we also want to be able to pass legislation and have it signed by the president.
And as a medical doctor, I'm not asking you to diagnose the president because I know you're not going to do that, but just the signs he has shown of some cognitive decline, would you agree those are kind of in line with some kind of some sort of a mental disorder or decline that he might be facing? And what can Congress do about that if they take control?
Well, I think, an observer from the times I've been in the White House and then watching video clips, that I think that there are definitely some concerning issues with the president's mental status. And I think that it would be appropriate, just as President Trump had taken a mental health test, that a brain health test, looking if there's dementia, President Biden should be willing to do that. I mean, it's not unusual for presidents to undergo their physical exams and to release those health reports to the public. Are there things Congress can do? Certainly there are things Congress can do, but I think for us, we will not only focus on the presidency and the accountability in the presidency, but we're going to try to legislate. We're going to try to get the country back on track when it comes to inflation, to high prices for gas, energy independence, which will help not only with fueling your gas tank at the gas pump, but also food prices. We're going to, try to get inflation under control, help with the supply chain, and help our economy to grow. So those things are tremendously important. Support for local law enforcement. We need to, get a secure border, which we do not have at this point in time. So when we're looking at things, people really want us to tackle the issues that they're facing, and that's inflation, crime, and they want a stronger economy. As we know, the economy is going into recession. They're changing the definition of what a recession was, but it's two negative quarters of GDP, which is what we have seen. So I think we need to focus on those things as well, try to work with the president, and then I think really in conducting oversight and in trying to pass meaningful legislation that tackles the issues that everyday people face, those kitchen table issues, and then look towards 2024 to gain the presidency.
Anything more you want to add, ma'am?
I would say that doing our 20-county tour is just emblematic of how I have been in Congress. I'm very tenacious. I meet with people. I'm accessible. I'm available. And the way you get 13 pieces of legislation passed when you're in the minority is that you meet with people in the district, you listen to them, and then you try to solve their problems. So I'm going to continue to work hard and fight hard for Iowans.
Thank you very much.